Hello YouTubers, and welcome to this review of 4 scientific natural view calculators. Now what I'm going to be doing in this review is kind of going over giving an overview of the ergonomics and some of the functions and functionality of these calculators versus, let's say, older traditional calculators. I'm also kind of going to give an understanding of where calculators are going to and how useful they can be. And then kind of my background as to why I'm reviewing these calculators, and then the potential future reviews and perhaps mathematics tutorials that I'd like to do. Now, so for those of you who are specifically here just to see the kind of overview and ergonomics of these calculators to try and help you pick one of them, I'm going to put a little annotation here which will allow you to skip straight to that, so you can skip the little chit chat that I'm going to do now. Right, so let me just explain why I've actually decided to do this review and go into calculators. If some of you who may be subscribers to my main channel, and I'll put an annotation here to my channel where I kind of review solar power, electronic measurement equipment, will probably be wondering why I'm actually branching off into calculators. Now, for a lot of the tutorials that I do on my other channel, obviously mathematics plays a critical part. In electrical or electronic engineering, there can be some quite complex mathematical equations to get through if you want to produce a project or design something. Now, mathematics wasn't my strong point at school, but I have since grown to enjoy a little bit of mathematics, particularly when I went and took my ham radio exam in the States. I needed to revisit some of my high school maths because you had to deal with complex numbers for that exam. And that drew me to buy the Texas Instruments, the TI-30XS, which is a multi-line kind of natural view calculator, which certainly made it far easier and far more enjoyable to do the maths that was required for those exams that I wrote. So that was the kind of impetus to get me into looking at these calculators. I decided to, with doing the tutorials for my other channel, I wanted to find a good calculator which made it easy and more enjoyable for working out some of the formulas and mathematics that is required for electrical engineering. So I went on a quest of buying several of these to kind of get a feel for which was the best and easiest to use. My other quest, though, is that I have a 5-year-old daughter, and she will obviously soon be starting grade 1, grade 2, and start getting into basic mathematics, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and she'll be moving into algebra and then into doing differentiation, integration, matrices, and complex numbers. And a lot of that mathematics I've long since forgotten, and it wasn't my strong point at school. So for myself, I would like to bring my math skills up so that I've got a better level for my tutorials, and to hopefully help and act as a teacher and guide my daughter when she gets into mathematics. And for that reason, I know the easiest way to learn is to have a subject matter which is fun. So I'm investing in some time into learning how to use these calculators properly. I am going to invest in a Casio calculator, and I'll talk a bit more about that now, to hopefully make my learning experience a little easier and fun. I would like to put tutorials together, if people are interested, where I go through applied maths problems, some fun problems, so that there's an end goal to achieve, so that the whole learning process isn't so much of a toil to get through to learn the maths to kind of get to an end result. There's an end result which is fun, and then you go through the steps to get there. So that is the reason for my own personal quest to kind of pursuing calculators and mathematics again. Now, so what I do want to also demonstrate when we first get onto the bench and I show you those calculators is kind of where the old school calculators that I was used to when I went to school and the advantages of these new calculators. Calculators have come a long way since kind of basic one-line display, punching information in, having to get an answer, write it down, doing the next part of your equation. You can now type in multiple lines and have it viewed in a natural format that you would see in a textbook, which really adds to and makes it far easier to edit and see what you're doing. So I'll demonstrate that change in terms of the old school calculators to what these can do. Then moving on from that, the calculators which are being produced nowadays are very advanced. They are basically mini computers. In particular, probably one of the leaders in that area is Texas Instruments. And one of the things I'll be talking about in terms of the pros and cons of these calculators is that having a good backing from the company that you buy from in terms of the manuals, the teaching material, because that's the one area that Texas Instruments seem to have a lead, because they seem to be adopted as a standard in the schools in the States, where there is a teaching curriculum based around these and applications for these. So they certainly have become very powerful in that regard. Now the other system I was talking about was CAS, which is computer algebra systems. So those have been added into calculators to make them far more powerful in terms of doing advanced mathematics. In particular, you can have, it can actually display a solution to an answer. So if you give it an integral function, it can then lay out the steps of how that sum is resolved. You can put in a complex formula with multiple variables and pick the variable that you wanted to solve for. So you could say, right, I've got x, y, and z in this formula, but I want you to solve for z. Or now I want you to solve for y because I've got the other variables, and it can step through that. And that's the kind of feature and functionality that I'm hoping will make my new learning in mathematics more fun. So if you are keen to kind of have a bit more review of these calculators and how they can potentially help you grow in your learning for maths or your passion for maths, then certainly please give us a thumbs up and comment below. If you're keen to see tutorials on these calculators or even mathematics tutorials as I learn to grow my knowledge more, then certainly let me know and give us a thumbs up and I'll pursue that. That, in terms of supporting what I'm doing, the time and effort on these tutorials, if I do pursue it, you can always go down to my Amazon store below. I'll have a link to some calculators on Amazon that you can perhaps purchase. Or you can make donations. There's a link down there for donations. I will be purchasing, once I have enough money, is Texas Instruments Nspire CAS CX calculator, which has got a full color screen, lots of packages inside it to make the whole learning experience more fun. Right, so let's get down onto the bench and have a look at where calculators come from and what you can do with these kind of natural view calculators. Right, so what I'm going to do to kind of first demonstrate the kind of real ease and power of these nice kind of multi-line natural view calculators. And I say natural view, it's kind of a kind of more textbook orientated view. The different manufacturers give their own names to it. Texas Instruments say MultiView. Sharp will call theirs like right view, but we'll cover that off when we get to the other calculators. Now, what I'm going to demonstrate is a formula that I perhaps used in one of my previous electronic engineering tutorials, where we're trying to calculate the voltage or the resistance of one of the resistors in a voltage divider for an electrical or electronic circuit. Now, it doesn't matter, you don't have to worry about the practical application here. It's just a case of looking at the formula to determine the value of this R2. Now, R2 here, as you can see, is expressed by R2 is equal to R1 over V in over V out minus 1. So what I'm going to go, so to do that on a standard calculator, I've got the kind of values here. You can see I've had to write down on the piece of paper here the kind of values for the R1, the voltage in, the voltage out, minus 1. And if we're going to use a standard calculator, we'd perhaps go through a procedure like this. Right, so to do a calculation like this with a formula that is set up like this, with a traditional calculator, one would probably have to go through a process like this. You'd initially say your 30 divided by 4.5 equals, I'd get the answer. I'd then say minus 1 equals, to get that answer, I then perhaps either have to write that down or store it in memory, but we've got, okay, so it's 5.66, we'll call it. We then have to say, right, clear, and go 4.7 divide by 5.66 equals. And now I get a value, and because I've not been using, let's say, exponentials here for the k, I've got an answer here of 0.830, which equates to the answer that we've got here. Now then, if you have one of these natural view or multi-view calculators, life becomes far simpler. I'll bring you in a little closer so you can actually see, but then I can actually enter the equation exactly as it looks on the piece of paper. So I can go 4.7, and that is over, and I open the brackets, 30 over 4.5 minus 1, and we close the brackets. So as you can see, that the whole display shows you graphically exactly what you've got on your textbook or your piece of paper yourself. And the beauty of that is you can see exactly whether you've got all the right numbers incorrectly. You can use a cursor and go back and edit if you've made a mistake or you just want to change a value for the calculation. And then once you've got that, you obviously hit the enter button or equals, and you get your answer. Far simpler than having to tap it out multiple times on the old style calculator. So that really is the beauty of these little beasts. They really are handy in that regard. You can also go up and then obviously view previous calculations that you've done, which is really handy. So now let's pull in the other calculators to have a look at the kind of different brands in this kind of line of scientific multi-view or natural view calculators. Right, so let's take a look at all these, the different brands from Texas Instruments, Casio, Sharp, and HP. Now in this kind of little review / overview, I'm certainly not going to be able to cover off all the features and functionality of all these calculators because there's just too much. And also I don't know how to use all the features and functionality, but I'll go through some basic calculations on each of them and show you a couple of quirks perhaps that you might want to be wary of if you are kind of looking at a calculator in this kind of range. Now, in terms of the pricing and the basic features, the Texas Instruments TI-30XS, which again is a very popular calculator, it retails for roughly around $15. In fact, on Amazon, as I speak at the moment, it goes for $14 and something. Again, it's the multi-view, it's got multiple lines, and they call that the kind of multi-view for its natural display. It's got 4 lines of display which you can scroll through. They say it's good for geometry, general maths, statistics, pre-algebra, algebra 1 and 2, trigonometry, general science, and biology. So that's all the kind of functionality which is on this one. I said I've had a fair bit of time on this one. I used it for my exams. I really enjoyed using this calculator. It also has dual power. It is powered by a little solar panel and a battery inside. So if you are somewhere where there's little light, the display won't dim because it's got a battery as a backup. And that goes for the case of the other 2 which have solar panels as well. The Sharp in this case doesn't have a solar panel. It's only battery powered. But there are versions above this Sharp which do have that panel. So as I say, across the range here, these calculators are not all equal in terms of all their functionality. These are just a group I happen to have purchased. Some are slightly more powerful than others. But the ergonomics between these models is fairly similar in the models above and below each of these lines. Right, so let's talk about the Casio. This is the Casio FX991ES Plus. Also be aware that some of these, the actual versions of these calculators are very region specific. Some of them are designed specifically, let's say, for South Africa or the States where the curriculum might be slightly different and they have features built in around particular school curriculums. Now this calculator goes for around roughly $20. they've got what they call their natural VPAM display in terms of their natural textbook display. It's also multi-line with scrolling. It does integration and differentiation. It also can calculate and solve. So this calculator, out of all of these, perhaps has the most powerful features and functionality in terms of that it can solve a variable in an equation. Then if we look at the Sharp, this is a Sharp ELW535HT. They have their kind of natural view or textbook view is called Right View. It obviously has navigation. It's got the multi-line display. It's got 330 scientific functions, and but this is purely battery powered. This costs between $12 to $15. We then have the HP SmartCalc 300S. Now this calculator currently on Amazon sells from about $4, but it's roughly priced between $4 and $12. This actually I purchased yesterday. It cost me 140 Rand in South Africa. So we truly are being ripped off, unfortunately, again in South Africa for our electronics. Now this one, as I say, it's their SmartCalc. It's got what they call TFD, which is the textbook format display. It's got dual power, as I mentioned. It's got the solar panel and battery. It's got 249 functions, and they say it's good for trig, stats, and general mathematics. Now, out of all of these, I believe in terms of the features and functionality, the HP kind of sits at the lower end of the stack. But if you, like me, you're just looking for a calculator which allows you to input formulas easier and do general mathematics, whether it's kind of doing a bit of scientific functions, whether it's using sine or cosine or tan, then all of these do that, and they obviously have the kind of nice displays where you can input functions and fractions and formula rather far easier than you can with the old traditional calculator. So next, let's have a look at kind of the physical ergonomics of these calculators. Right, so what I'm going to do next is kind of bring these towards the camera and just show you a little about them. The Texas Instruments comes with this, all of them have this kind of protective cover. I'll just show you it in operation because it does play a role once we start getting down the line. It clips on the front, which is really handy, so it does protect your calculator if you're carrying it in a bag and you don't have it in a cover. Really nice and robust. It's not going to fall off too easily. It comes off. It does have a kind of little help. It does have a nice little instruction sheet laid in here, and that is double-sided. It comes out, it has instructions for doing some basic operations on it, because you know, if you're not using that functionality all the time, you're going to forget how to use it on the calculator itself. So it is sat there so you can refer to it. It does have these rubber feet on the base of that protective cover and on the bottom of the calculator, and that's something to note because it certainly does stop it from sliding around. It certainly does grip nicely, and then this clips onto the back of the calculator so it doesn't get lost when you're using it. The Casio, again, it's got a slide out protection cover. It's also got some scientific constants noted on the back, which you can obviously get to in the calculator itself, some conversion, and then some basic menu feature to change some settings. It doesn't have rubberized feet, so that it potentially is a little slippery in comparison to the Texas Instruments. So that's something to note. We'll get down to the displays and the keyboards a little later. I'm just showing kind of the external part of the calculators at the moment. The Sharp, again, has got a nice external cover. It doesn't have rubberized feet, so again, when you put it down on a desk, it might have a tendency to slip. You can obviously stick something on there, but it might get in the way of the actual protective case itself. It then slides into the case quite nicely, and that protects it. And the case handily sits on the outside so that it doesn't get lost. I'll just show you, I didn't show the protective case of the Casio. Same kind of thing, slides off, and it shouldn't fall out of there too easily. Then we get to the Hewlett-Packard, the HP, company I used to work for actually. Now it's got this nice bright friendly blue color to it. It's got the kind of traditional HP shaped keys, but we'll get down to talking about the keys a little later on. It does have this protective cover on the back, that protective cover that can go on the front. It also does have rubber feet on the bottom, which certainly gives it a nice sturdy grip on a desk. However, this little cover, I'll just demonstrate. It's really odd. You can clip it onto the calculator like this, and for the most part I imagine it shouldn't fall off if it was in a bag, but you cannot clip it onto the underside. It's really bizarre. I just don't know why they didn't make it so that it clipped onto the underside. One would naturally think it's going to clip in like that and the top should clip down like this, but these little plastic nibs over here on the back, which certainly don't allow the calculator to go down to be gripped. I almost reckon that if you removed those nibs, this might flip on, but then it would affect the way the cover fits on the top end. So a bit silly from the HP side. I don't know why they did that. Right, the next thing I'd like to demonstrate, as having these side by side, one can soon get a feel for the keys and how well they work and what they feel like. Now, the Texas Instrument, in my opinion, probably has the nicest feeling keys out of all of these calculators. They're not squishy, they're easy to push down, and they've got a nice positive feel when you actually hit them. That you can actually, if you're doing quick calculations, they're quite easy to tap. It's slightly smaller than the Sharps. I suppose if you're doing really quick calculation, the Sharp has a nice advantage there with the size of the keys it's got. But I must say, a nice positive feel to them, and they work really well. The Casio, they do have a reasonably positive feel as you push them. Perhaps a little more mushy, and they tend to roll around a little in comparison to the Texas Instruments. But still, can't really complain, they feel okay. The Sharp, in terms of size and the quality of the feel, feels nice, but they don't have that firm click when you go down. It just moves a little bit, and they're a little wriggly. So in terms of the feel of the keys, so far the Texas Instruments definitely wins. Now, Hewlett-Packard have certainly made a name in the past with their calculators, and they really have built some good quality devices. This one does have the kind of the old traditional shape on the keys, where it's got kind of a beveled off edge. But in the older calculators, they used to have a very positive feel. These aren't too bad, but they are a bit mushy, and I have found that using them, sometimes if you hit the edge, the key kind of goes down to the side and it doesn't actually take or display or do something. So I think HP could have done better. They've done far better in the past with their actual keys on their calculators. The next important thing to note is that on these calculators, you can navigate around on the screen with these kind of pads. Now, the Texas Instrument has got this little pad over here, which has got a little space away from the keys, and it certainly is usable. You can navigate relatively easy with it. It's got this kind of oval shape, which kind of makes the left and right, which you probably use most, very easy to use, but then there's less kind of feel when you're going up and down. So it's okay, but I think it could be better. The Casio has got a completely round kind of touchpad for directing your cursor, and if we switch it on and navigate, yes, it works, but again, these touchpads, you could have a tendency not quite, if you're hitting it up here in the quarter part, you might have a tendency not to be able to navigate to exactly where you're going to, but still it's got space around it. It'll do the job. The calculator which I think wins here, which is, I say, just my personal opinion, is the Sharp. it moves away from having a kind of pad to separate keys. So it really is easy to navigate around, go up and down. You're hitting a particular key, you're not going to kind of hit something halfway in between. Also, if you are just trying to navigate quickly, you can tap the keys. Whereas on these designs, you're more inclined to have to put your finger and push through to do the edit. You perhaps can tap, but it doesn't have the same kind of ergonomic feel, in my opinion, that these separate cursor keys have on the Sharp. I have noted that on later models of Texas Instruments, they seem to have gone to the same idea of in some cases using separate keys for the cursor, or in fact on their later models going to a touchpad. Then we get down to the HP. Now the HP has got this little again pad here. Again, out of all of these, I think you're more prone to struggle to kind of get the right direction and not get the direction you want. Also, the space around it. On all of these, you can easily touch them without hitting or feeling any other keys under your finger. On the HP in particular, when you're going on the down side of it, your finger is resting or touching the two brackets, the keys with the brackets on underneath. So it doesn't give a good confident feel, and potentially touching other keys. Not that I think you're likely to actually hit those and enter them at the same time. It's just that the room for maneuvering around it and the feel of navigating with it, I think is the poorest of all these calculators. Right, next I'm going to give you a kind of look at the displays, how we navigate and how the things are displayed on each of these calculators. What I want to point out, the one interesting thing I noted with the Casio and the HP, they obviously both have the same liquid crystal display. The actual layout of the display, they must source the actual LCD from the same place, so I don't know whether there's some rebadging or OEMing, I'm not sure. So but the Casio, I was beginning to wonder, and in fact if you look at the layout of the keys on these two calculators, there are some definite similarities in terms of, if you look at the top there, the shift, the alpha key, the mode/setup key and the on key, both of them have them at the top. They do start differing in some of the layout of the keys, but I was beginning to wonder whether they were kind of rebadge of each other, but I just wanted to point that out as a point of interest. Right, so let's look at the numbers and how they're displayed on this screen. So if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Now what I wanted to demonstrate here is obviously that on these calculators they actually scroll out. The Texas Instruments clearly has a nice little arrow indicator to show here that you have something that you've entered is out the screen. You can see, just out of interest, navigating, obviously tapping is far quicker, holding it tends to drip along a bit slowly. As you can see, we've got some numbers on the other side there we have to get to. Let's do this for the Casio. Very similar kind of thing, a big easy arrow to have a look at. If I hold it, the cursor movement seems to be a bit bigger. The cursor, because they're using a smaller cursor, might not be as easy to see as the actual Texas Instruments. So that's one thing to note. But certainly you can navigate across, and you can see it actually goes right through if you're tapping. Let's look at the Sharp. Now on the Sharp, you might not have noticed, you'll see the numbers have scrolled out of the screen, but there's no big indicator as there has been on the Texas Instruments and the Casio. Up there on the display, there's a little arrow on the top over there, which is showing you that you've got some numbers or digits that you've got typed which are scrolled out. So let's just use this. I must say, here again, the navigation, you can see the cursor moves fairly quickly. It kind of disappears from view a little bit if you're holding it down, but it does move fairly quickly. I'll just show you what it looks like. It's got a flashing triangle or arrow versus the Casio is just the little line, or the Texas Instruments, which has the nice square block. And there we go. I must say, very easy feel in terms of navigating on the Sharp. Then we get to the HP. Right. Again, does the same format, very similar to the Casio with the kind of triangle. As I said, I think obviously the technology and intelligence inside these is, if not the same, and just at a different level. So here I use the cursor. It pops along slowly, and because it's the small little dash like it is on the Casio, not the easiest to see when you're navigating, but nonetheless. Right, so there we go. Now what I'm going to do on each of these is I'm going to repeat that same calculation, type it out on here, and do some editing just to show you functionally how some of the quirks with these calculators. Right, so I'm just about to type in that formula again to do the calculation on each of these calculators to see how easy it is for me to actually type it in, do some editing. I will just note, in terms of the clarity of the displays, each of these you can change the contrast on the screens. In terms of the actual look, from my personal point of view, I'm not sure how it's going to show on the camera, probably the two best displays are the Sharp and the Texas Instruments. The Casio and the HP obviously have the same display, and theirs, I think, tends to be a little bluish, and the contrast of the dot matrix display sometimes is not as good as the other two. Certainly they work well enough. I certainly wouldn't discount them for that reason. Right, so the first thing, before I enter a kind of more complex formula with in a fraction format as I worked with before, I will enter a simple math sum just to see how it displays. So if we just do a simple sum like 8 times 9 minus 6 plus 3, and on the Texas Instruments you don't have an equal, you've got an enter, you get your answer up over there. And I'll do the same on the Casio. So if we go 8 times 9 minus 6 plus 3. Now there's a few things I want you to note here, and the reason I'm doing it on all of these in terms of the size of the digits and the signs that they use. You'll note here on the Texas Instruments they use a star for the multiplication as opposed to this kind of X or the traditional multiply sign on the Casio. And that, for some people, maybe if you're want something that looks exactly like your textbook or what have you, may be something that you pick up on. I just note it for you. Here we've got an equals, and it places the answer down there. We'll do the same on the Sharp. So we're going to go 8 times 9 minus 6 plus 3. A nice big equals key on here, I must say, so it makes it nice and easy to use. Down there, 69. And on the HP, we go 8 times 9 minus 6 plus 3 equals, and there we go. Just to give you an idea of the size. The size of the characters on both the HP and the Casio are slightly larger than the Texas Instruments and the Sharp, but for all of them, very clear and easy to read. Right, so let's go and have a look at the ease of going back to edit something on these calculators then. On the Texas Instruments up here, I can then go up, I can cursor up, I select, if I push enter, it then pulls it down onto come out of my working space. I can then cursor along and then go and enter, let's say I want to enter the number 7 there as a correction. At the moment, it's in an overwrite mode, so if I push the 7, it simply overwrites it. It does have an insert. If I go second function insert, I could then insert another number there. It's got a delete key to go and delete. And you can see it took out the plus, so I'm going to put in the plus again. I need to put in a 3 there because there's an overwrite, and I'm going to delete the 8. So there we go. I've made my correction there, and if I push enter, it'll then obviously recalculate and put the answer over there. Let's have a look on the Casio. A simple left push on the keypad here takes me to the number I want to change, and if I want to go and change that, I've got a little delete key down over here. Delete, it goes in essence backspaces to take out. I then change that to 7. If I push equals, it then repeats with the answer. On the sharp, simple left, go up to the 6. You can see the cursor is actually over the 6 itself. I change that to a 7. It's obviously in an overwrite mode at the moment. You can change to an insert or an overwrite. So what I'll do is I'll go back, and it's got a backspace key over here. So I can go and backspace and delete one back. Hit enter, I get my answer. On the HP, again, it should be fairly similar. It's got a delete key. So this is similar to the Casio. I put in a 7, hit equals, and it picks up the answer over there. You'll note on some of these, it's got an equals and an answer. That functionality basically allows you to take an answer from a previous calculation. So if I go answer, say that answer, which was the previous one, and you could say +1 equals, the previous answer, sorry, was 68, +1 becomes 69. Right, so let's go and enter that more complex formula and see how these handle. Right, and the reason I want to go back and enter that formula again, because one of these calculators has a little quirk that, again, you need to be aware of because it may be quite annoying. Right, so on the Texas Instruments, I'm going to enter that formula. I've got the paper on the side here. I'm going to enter this formula over here, which is obviously a fraction with another fraction underneath. So we'll go 4.7, and because we've got a fraction, we've got this n over d key over here, numerator over denominator, push that. I then got 30 again over 4.5. I then need to do the cursor because I want to get away from that fraction to put in a minus sign 1. Now all of that should have been in brackets, so I'm going to go back, use my edit key because I forgot to do it initially. Put a bracket over there, put a bracket over there, and there we go. And it's obviously easy enough to go in and change things with that cursor key. I push enter and I get my answer over here. Let's do that on the Casio. So we've got 4.7, and it's got this little symbol over here, which is kind of a solid block and a non-solid block to go down to do your denominator. And as we said, up front I'll do my brackets, and we've got 30 over 4.5. We close the, I did that in the wrong place, so I'll just delete. I need to cursor that way. We're going minus 1, close the brackets. That's our complete formula. We could obviously go in and change things fairly easily. Push equals. So that again, so what I want to show here is what happens the number of display lines. So these characters might be bigger in terms of the size of the matrix or the LCD here, but as you can see, it pushes your original formula out of the display in comparison with the Texas Instruments. Let's do it on the sharp. 4.7, and on the Texas Instruments it has got an A over B key over here. We're then going to put in our brackets and say 30 again over 4.5. We want to then say minus 1 and close our brackets. Then go equals. And the sharp as well. So now the interesting thing here is the view or the format that is providing the answer is a fraction. And on all of these, what you can do is change the format of the answer. So on the Casio here, I'll show you that you've got the S to D. If I push that, it'll show you in a fraction format. And then, interestingly, you can see it actually fits the answer in the display. We'll go back to normal. On the sharp, again, you've got this change key. There we go. But when it shows the fraction format, you can see how part of the display disappears. But then it comes back. Let's just check that on the Texas Instruments. If I recall correctly, it should be this key over here. There we go. It gives you that. but then it's pushed the calculation off the stack. It's moved the stack up because everything is being stacked above. So in this case now, if you did that and you want to go see your original calculation, you'd have to cursor up to go and see it. There you go. You could then obviously go in and edit that, but it does mean things are pushed up a stack which you go to get to. In terms of going back up the stack, you can see the Casio as well. You can go through previous work. The Sharp allows you to go back and review things as well. On the HP, so this is what I want to highlight about the HP now when we go and enter. As you saw on all the others, I'll start the calculation. You go and enter 4.7. You can see over here it's got the same key over here that the Casio has to go and do your fraction. So your natural inclination is to go and push that key, but you can see nothing's happening. It's not coming down to put the denominator in. And when I was using this yesterday, when I received it for the first time, I actually thought the key was faulty. I was about to take it back. But no, HP have another quirk for entering the fraction. So let me clear that. What you have to do up front, which to me isn't the most natural way of just typing it in as you'd see in a textbook, you have to push that key to show that you work, and you can see that. There we go. I pushed it the first time, the key didn't react, and that's what I have found with the HP. You push it to say you're entering a fraction, and it provides this whole fraction over here. You then go 4.7. You then, and I don't see any other way around this unless someone's going to tell me, you then have to use your cursor key to come down to the bottom. I'll then put in the brackets, and it's going to be the 30. Now I've made the same mistake again. I want to put in a fraction and I forgot to do that, so I'm going to have to go delete and say I want to do a fraction and go 30, cursor down, over 4.5, cursor to the side, go -1, put in the bracket, and then I will push equals for the answer. And as you can see, it then displays, you get the full answer, but obviously you want to be able to change that. You again got this kind of S to D key, but then your figure is pushed out the display just like the Casio. We'll pull it back. But you can, as you can see, you can cursor up and go see previous calculations, and obviously then use your cursor key to go in and make editing changes. So anyway, I just wanted to show that to you, some of the quirks of these calculators in terms of how they display things, how you enter things, the quirk on the HP. I must say the HP from that point of view I find irritating, but if you really wanted a cheap MultiView, natural view kind of calculator, this is the cheapest of the bunch. I say, although it does have the quirks of the layout of the keyboard, the feel of the keys, the ergonomics around the cursor pad, not the best for me, but nonetheless it's fairly cheap. The Sharp is nice and easy to enter on with the keys, but as you can see the display, sometimes things get dropped out. The Casio at least doesn't have the some of the entering issues that the HP has, even though it seems to kind of have the same display and perhaps intelligence inside it. But it does have obviously the issues where some things are cut out of the display. The Texas Instruments, for me, the keyboard is the nicest to use. It would be nice if they had the kind of separate keys on it. It fits everything nicely into the display once you've done the calculation, as you can see here. But when I did that change, things get pushed out up onto the stack, but then you can obviously go up onto the stack, which is quite a handy feature, and then go and do go and review or edit things that you might want to change and calculate. Anyway, I hope that's given you some idea. We'll just wrap it up quickly. Right, so I really hope that little overview kind of gave a little bit of a better introduction into these calculators and might help guide you in terms of making a purchase. You know, reading reviews on the internet when someone's writing a review on a particular calculator and they don't have the others side by side, you're not necessarily going to pick up those little nuances between all of these calculators. So in summary, if I still had to pick a favorite out of all of these, it would still be my original Texas Instruments 30XS. Because of the feel of the keys, the display, I do like the rocker control, although I think that the Sharp does beat it on that count in terms of the navigation. The Casio out of all of these, although I haven't gone into any advanced mathematics, the Casio has the most advanced mathematics features on it. But the display, it's certainly usable and functional. I'd be very critical to really floor it, but out of all of them, the Casio and the HP display, I certainly have a preference to the other two. The Sharp, again, I really like the layout of the keys and the display. Nice size buttons if you just want to generally tap away easily on a calculator. In some ways it may be more intuitive to use if you're just looking for a normal desk calculator, but with that nice kind of multi-line display and the easy view. This may be the most natural, easy one to use because this has got, instead of equals, has got an enter. And so that might seem a bit odd to a lot of people who are used to having an equals on a calculator. The Hewlett-Packard, to me, is the kind of dog end of the bunch of these. Its build quality and feel actually doesn't feel too bad. It functionally does what it needs to. If it's purely based on having a calculator like this at a very cheap entry point, then certainly this is the cheapest of the bunch. It does, as I showed you, does have the quirks with entering fractions, but for that I suppose it is the cheapest of the bunch, but certainly in terms of if I was going to grab one of these and I functionally needed to work with a calculator, it wouldn't be the HP. As I said, I do plan to get hold of the Texas Instruments Inspire CAS CX, the kind of probably one of the top end calculators that you can get. I do currently have about $120 in my PayPal account. That calculator is going to cost me to get it here to South Africa about $220. So if you are keen to support what I'm doing, that's certainly one way of doing it, is popping either a $5 or $10 donation, and hopefully soon I can place that order and get it here. And I can kind of do a comparison to these calculators and stepping up to that kind of technology. Does it add the great technology and fun to maths that I'm hoping it will do? We'll find out, I say, once I manage to get it in my hands. So if you do like these kinds of reviews, I know this has been a bit long, but if you want to see more calculator reviews or perhaps going into actual mathematics tutorials in terms of fun applied applications of maths and how to get there, then I'll do that. Then certainly post a comment below, give us a thumbs up, share it, it all helps. Thanks very much for watching. Cheers.